New York, but also how exciting is it for us to know that we can be the model for the rest of the nation. That's what we always do. We're always the leaders. We're always the first in America. Others will look at us. Other cities are paying attention. How is it going to work here? Well, we're going to show them. We're going to show them how you do this. And I mention sports teams all the time. I love our sports. But I think about, we love to win here in New York, right? We love to win. We have, right now it's Yankees, Mets season. But sometimes losing is a good thing too. Let me explain that. With congestion pricing, New Yorkers have a lot to lose. How about 15 to 20% fewer vehicles in the central business district every single day? Less noise, less honking, less gridlock. How about less air pollution, lower carbon emissions, lower speeds, fewer crashes? I don't mind losing that. Fewer kids getting hit by cars on their way to school. And again, we talk about being first in the nation. A couple other places have done it globally. We've watched them. That's why we know this will work here. We know it'll work. We saw what happened in places like London and Stockholm where the congestion dropped 10 to 20%. It's extraordinary. But all the talk about losing, New York are winners. New Yorkers are winners. Let's talk about the fact that we can generate revenue. We can win the effort to make sure that we have enough resources, enough money to continue funding the system that allows us to have this alternative. We have to keep public transportation strong and vibrant and clean and on time. Otherwise, we're not offering people a better alternative. And thank God we have a better alternative, a fantastic alternative. But we're going to keep making sure we have the investments to make sure that years from now, it is just as viable and as vibrant as it's always been. So $1 billion extra a year to leverage $15 billion in bonds. That money can be transformative. Now, we just came off a budget session, made sure we had the money to keep the trains from going off the cliff, which is where they were heading, because we could not have foreseen the loss in ridership, the loss in revenues, et cetera, because of the pandemic. So I'm here to say, we'll continue doing our investments, but it's not going to be enough. This is a viable funding source that is going to help us sustain the level of service and even enhance it for commuters who've not yet discovered the ease and the benefit of using trains that may be right there for them, but they're just so conditioned to driving the cars. We're going to help them see the light. We're going to help them find the pain, help them find the road. So we're going to be able to continue investing in new subways, new subway cars, commuter rail cars, electrify our bus fleet. How about that? Facilitating our ADA compliant and accessibility retrofits, which is critically important. So let me conclude by saying this. Doctors know, parents know, sometimes it takes a little while for the decongestant to start taking effect. Okay? We're going to give it a little bit of time. We're going to get this right. We're going to get the messages out. Dana, thank you again, and all others are going to help educate people. And the point is today we've diagnosed the illness. We have the medicine. We can make it better. And ultimately, the body, this vibrant body known as New York City, will be so healthy and vibrant, and it'll live forever because of what we're doing here today. So thank you, everyone who's been part of this journey for such a long time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And with that, let me introduce the leader of the MTA, someone who will continue to build a legacy of incredible accomplishment, especially during some of the most challenging times in the history of our city, Jana Lieber.
For you. A little bit of Bronx salsa there, right? Look, the governor really did say it all, right? I mean, I have never heard a more inspiring statement of the logic of what we're doing. We're here to celebrate I'm going to try to be brief. This is an amazing day for New Yorkers. The sign has fallen out, but let me just remind you what it says. Congestion pricing means less traffic, better transit, cleaner air, and safer streets. That's what congestion pricing means for New Yorkers. And it means that we have, as a city, we have a path away from conditions that really threatened our viability. Ambulances can't get to hospitals. Police cars can't get to crimes in progress. And nobody's done more to help us than Governor Hochul and Mayor Adams in addressing issues of safety in the mass transit system and in the city at large. The fire trucks can't get to fires in progress. Some would say we're in the middle of a five-alarm fire called climate change, and thank you for highlighting that so brilliantly, Governor. We have to do something. We can't do nothing. And this is our moment to do something about the conditions that threaten the viability of New York. New York, mass transit makes New York possible. Mass transit is like air and water to New Yorkers. Talk about the air we breathe. By deciding in favor of mass transit, and not to forget, we always talk about the drivers and what they're doing and how they're being impacted. 90% of New Yorkers who come to the Central Business District take mass transit. Let's think about them for a minute and what it's going to do for them. There's so many people to thank who got us here, and you acknowledged a lot of them. I got to say, looking out at this room, it's moving to me to see people sitting in the front row who represent riders like Donna. So I got to say, to the Riders Alliance and the rider community, who not only helped get us to congestion pricing, this milestone, but also helped us with the governor's leadership to overcome the budget deficits for a long time. Not a one-year solution, but a four-year solution. Thank you. Thank you to the riders. Thank you, League of Conservation Voters. Thank you, Tri-State Transportation Campaign. Thank you to the environmental community that stepped up for this. I got to thank my MTA team. The board is well represented here, but you all did a lot, but nobody did more than a person of moderate stature, but a big name and a big title name, Dr. Allison De Sereno. Where are you, Allison? Thank you. You led the MTA team. Together with Mike Wojner and so many other people, you made it possible for us to complete the 4,000 pages of document that constitute this environmental assessment that allowed the federal government, and this is the federal government, Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Federal Highway Administrator Shailene Bott, saying that they've studied it to death, and we studied every intersection almost all the way to Philadelphia, and they studied the air quality, and they studied all it means, and they said that this initiative, this dramatic historic initiative, will not have a significant impact on the 28 million people in the region under federal environmental law. That's what this means. But there's nobody I have to thank more, honestly, and you accuse me of sucking up, but I'm going to do it anyway, to thank Governor Kathy Hochul. Think of what you did in 2022, not to be overlooked, a competitive election year. You stood up for less congestion, safer streets, better air quality, and better transit in the face of loud voices. And you stepped us up for New York, not just for the MTA, for our riders, for our 6 million riders every day, with a budget solution that resolves the MTA operating deficits for quite some time, that enables us to keep providing commuter rail and subway and bus service at the same levels. There was a lot at stake, as you said, because the world is looking at us as a model. We have been going around recently to some industry conventions and so on, and folks are saying, we're watching. And New York is now becoming, thanks to the budget deal and this action today, a model of how you deal not only with congestion and climate change, but how do you start to revive an urban area in the face of COVID. And let me tell you, we're on the move. You see it in the MTA's numbers, and you see it in the energy that the city is starting to have. And as you said, New York continues to lead. I am so proud to stand here and represent, because of the job, of the elected officials who the governor called out, and so many of your colleagues, so many people who I've known and worked for many years, who also stood up in the face of the car lobby, let's just call them what they are, the car lobby, and made sure that coming out of COVID, we have the right priorities. And the priorities that represented by this aren't just air quality and congestion and safer streets. It's also affordability. The governor has made affordability a watchword of her administration. Transit is one of the very few things that makes New York truly affordable. It probably costs less than 10% of the cost of owning an automobile to be a New York mass transit rider. If we're serious about dealing with equity in our city, people have opportunity because there's mass transit. Let's double down on it, and that's what we're doing here. New York mass transit is what makes our density possible, our density that's 9 times Phoenix or Houston and double Boston and Chicago. We couldn't be New York without mass transit, and we're helping to bring people back to mass transit with everything that's going on. So thank you to everybody who got us here today. I especially want to acknowledge our partners in city and state government, as the governor did, as well as the federal officials who were along for the ride and really made it possible for us to achieve this incredible milestone. And thanks to all of you for being part of this venture. Thanks. And now, a much more compelling speaker who is also a better dancer, Congressman Richie Torres.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's truly an honor to be here with the governor, with the MTA chair, with all of you. First, I want to pay tribute to Dick Ravage, who tragically... Dick Ravage is one of the greatest public servants that our city has ever known. And congestion pricing is the culmination of his life's work. And so I'm proud that we're all proudly standing on his shoulders. I want to thank the governor and the MTA chair for undertaking the most ambitious effort at congestion pricing in the history of the United States. You're sending a powerful message that as New York goes, so goes the rest of the country. And to the governor's point, you know, we live in a world that is so interconnected that wildfires in Quebec can lead to extreme air pollution here in New York City. And we're reminded that climate change is not an abstraction. It's a clear and present danger that requires bold action like congestion pricing. Congestion pricing would lead to as much as a 20% reduction in the number of vehicles entering the central business district, less congestion, less air pollution, fewer greenhouse gas emissions. It would improve public health and combat climate change. It's a win for equity because it will benefit the lowest income communities of color. It's going to benefit our essential workers. You know, during COVID, we saw our essential workers, who primarily use public transit, put their lives at risk during the peak of the pandemic so that the rest of our city and state could safely shelter in place. And we have a moral obligation to ensure that those workers have a reliable and affordable public transit system that enables them to survive and thrive in our city. The MTA is essential to our essential workers who are essential to all of us. And this plan is a benefit not only to the users of public transportation, it benefits all of us because we all benefit from the economic growth that the MTA facilitates. This is a win for environmental justice. It will invest $155 million in EJ communities, particularly in the Bronx. $25 million for green spaces and parks, $20 million for EV charging stations, $20 million for clean trucks, $15 million to replace refrigerated trucks units at the Hunts Point Terminal Market. These trucks are the dirtiest fossil fuels, and replacing them will cut particulate matter pollution by as much as 90% in the Hunts Point area. $20 million for a Bronx asthma clinic, because the Bronx for far too long has been ground zero for asthma hospitalizations, and $10 million for air filtration units for students who live near highways like the Cross Bronx Expressway. The MTA is the lifeblood of our city, and the 24/7 transit system is the envy of our nation. And we have a historic opportunity to not only sustain, but to strengthen that which makes New York City the city that never sleeps and the greatest city in the world. And I'm honored to be a small part of this effort. Thank you. Now I have the honor of introducing someone who boosted my seniority in the United States Congress. I call him America's prosecutor, Dan Goldman.
Thank you, Congressman Torres. Governor, it's great to be here. Jano, wonderful to see so many city and state elected officials here to truly celebrate what is a groundbreaking message from both the federal government, but also New York City. We've heard a lot, and I think the Governor, Jano, and Richie summed it up incredibly well about all of the benefits that New York City will gain from congestion pricing. I want to also highlight a couple other benefits that those outside of New York City will get. Notwithstanding, as what Jano calls it, the car lobby, the vast majority of people in the outer boroughs and the suburbs travel to the central business district using mass transit. And what we will be able to do through the MTA with this $15 billion plus is not only continue to electrify our buses, not only to improve our subway system, make sure we're running on time, also to improve significantly our commuter rail, which so many use. And ultimately, and I think this is what I'm perhaps most excited about, to fix and reduce the number of transit deserts that we have around the city through capital improvement, through additional bus lines, and hopefully one day through more subway usage. I also want to just acknowledge a couple other people. I want to give a warm welcome, or a warm shout out, I should say, to the Dean of the New York Congressional Delegation, Jerry Nadler, who has been a tremendous proponent of congestion pricing. And as I personally welcome you to my district here, it is also, I also am in an interesting district because about half of my district is in the central business district and about half of it in Brooklyn is not. And I'm also really proud to see Assemblywoman Joanne Simon here from the Brooklyn side, who has undoubtedly taken a little bit of flack for supporting congestion pricing, but as a proud environmentalist and a staunch supporter of not only attacking our climate change issue, but improving our mass transit, reducing congestion, making our streets safer, and doing it all so that we can reduce pollution. And we all know that pollution went down by 40% during the pandemic. So we know the benefits of reducing car traffic, and we know that we will be able to have a much less traffic. Buses will be able to move faster than 9 miles per hour. And I think what the governor pointed out that's so important is we've seen this done around the world. London was able to increase their public and green space by 30% after they implemented congestion pricing. And it has had pretty much no impact on tourism. So it's a little bit of an adjustment to get used to what may be coming, and I think a lot of people are imagining what the worst case scenario is. But because of the work that Jano and the city and state have done to assess the environmental impacts and evaluate this, and because of the data that we have from other places, we know this is going to work. So today we are not actually just celebrating what is commonly called a FONSI, a finding of no significant impact. we are celebrating a finding of significant impact, and it will have a significant impact on our city. So thank you all for being here. Very proud to be able to support this. Thank you, Governor. And now I get the honor of introducing Dana Dennis, the senior organizer from the Riders Alliance, who has been such a wonderful advocate on behalf of transit riders, speaking about how this will dramatically improve the lives of so many. Dana?
Good afternoon, everyone. Those of you who know me know I don't normally read from notes, but I have a few notes today because this is such an important topic. It's been such an important fight in my life for the last 5 years, and I want to make sure that the things I need to say are said today. First, I want to thank the governor for having me here. Congress members that went before me, Jano, you know, we're going to keep working together and fighting for a better MTA. And NYU, thank you, Sarah, for hosting all of us today. Also, there are some leaders here. Pedro, I heard you, my brother in this fight, all the way from Bed-Stuy. And Debbie, who lives right here in the Central Business District and came out with us today to represent bus riders in this district, and as the governor said, getting those buses through the traffic. But I'm here to represent subway and bus riders from all across the city, from every borough. And I want to make sure that this topic has a positive light continually. I think the naysayers have been loud. We've heard them. They're clear. And I'm not against making room for those conversations. We need to do that. We need to make sure that people are imagining even the worst case scenario, and then we need to push back and let them know what the benefits are and what is going to be so great about this. So I just want to say to Washington and to our leaders in DC and the congressional leaders here across the districts, thank you, right? I'm thankful to the president and for everyone in Washington for pushing this through. We need this program. Change is difficult. When we start to see change and things become different, we get nervous, we get uncomfortable. And I think that's what's happening across the state and across the city with congestion pricing. And a lot of times, unfortunately, the most affected, right, the people who are gonna get the biggest results out of it, and even sometimes the biggest benefits, are the ones who are kind of the last to hear about it. So when we start to talk about transit, right, and transit riders, and the ones who are the most transit dependent, so who is that person? That's the immigrant riders. That's the black and brown rider. That's the poor folks. That's the single mom with 2 kids and she can barely afford to put $2.75 on her Metro card. That is the folks who got us through and is still getting us through the pandemic. They were working late at night, overnight, stocking our grocery stores. They did not have the blessing that many of us, including myself, had from being remote or being hired. Those folks are working 2 jobs. So they didn't hear about the hearing. They didn't know. They didn't even know that it was until the end, and that's unfortunate. So I kind of have a personal charge for everyone in this room, for everyone who understands that congestion pricing is a great thing. It's going to be amazing for our city. While, as the governor said, the entire country is watching, hopefully what we can do is we can start to put that community aspect back into this. We talk about the policy, we talk about the numbers. If you are representing an organization or an agency who has it in their budget in this year, then I am encouraging you to hold a meeting and take up community space, whether it is in person or virtual. You don't have a facilitator, call on Riders Alliance. We're not perfect, but we will come out. We will reach out to our colleagues at RPA, at Tri-State. We will try to make sure that there are folks in the room who can talk about why this is a great thing for our city, from an environmental point of view, and of course for me, from a transit point of view. Why we need to speed up buses in the Central Business District. While outside of this district, transit riders are going to benefit. So let's talk about that. My work, right, is to constantly talk about what we can do to help these folks. And these folks, it's me. I'm these folks. This is how I got into this fight. Just being a person who could not afford my Metro card, working full time, could barely afford my rent in this city. So I'm always going to bring it back to that. That's me. A person who grew up in poverty and often still feel the effects of that throughout my family. So when we are making space for the rider concern around this, we want to make sure that we hear them and we bring it back to how this is going to benefit them. The biggest things that I hear in my office that I get emails and calls about every day, My train is delayed. I'm late to work. I'm late to school. I took a hit for childcare because I had to pay the late fee. I took a hit from work because my supervisor doesn't want to hear one more late train story. Everybody in here has a late train story. The meeting you were getting to, the job interview, right? The party you needed to be at. And it really wasn't your fault. You got up early. Well, we saw investments on the state side this year. Can we just get a round of applause for that? Huge, right? Huge. Our state leaders went to bat for frequency. We know because we were calling and emailing them nonstop. We're thankful for that. So that's a big one. That's one that we hear. Accessibility, huge wins again this year. And I'm hoping through congestion pricing, we can continue to have those investments. Because it's not okay that our transit system is only 25% accessible, fully accessible to riders. So again, we continue to see our seniors, our folks that identify with disabilities, still stuck on that bus that's got to get through traffic. And they do not have the option of hopping on the train that may or may not be late. So we've got to highlight them in this fight. And then affordability, it's a big one too. I know it's not here, but I'm just always gonna plug the need to expand fair fares, so I'm just plugging it here. That's my fight. But that's a big one, right? And you know, we've got to continue to work together. I'm thankful for you, Governor Hochul, right? It's good to see leadership on the state level that understands why this is important, that is leading the way. You know, it's good to have this. This wasn't always the case. It wasn't the case 5 years ago. So I can't wait to see what comes out of this. I'm not going to hold you up any longer. I'm going to thank everyone for being here, but I'm serious about that plug, about the meetings. Please grab one of us before we walk out the room. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you all for coming. That concludes our program.